I'm gonna get straight to the point, okay? So imagine that you're an overweight child. You've been overweight all your life, and then you decide at some point to get rid of the extra weight. For 1 year, a couple of years, you do all the workout, you eat well, and then you get your dream body. Now, for the first 6 months, assuming that you are able to maintain that dream body, you are still going to be most likely pretty insecure. You are going to be afraid of indulging too much. What if I put the weight back on? If I start eating one sweet, will I be able to control, or will I just eat a whole bunch of them? You are still pretty insecure because the thing is still new. If you are able to maintain your new body for the next 2 years, after that you will have gained a certain amount of confidence. There will still be some insecurity, most likely, but you will be able to indulge once in a while without guilt, without fear, and you will be able to kind of live a life without constantly monitoring your weight. 5 years, now you will be most likely able to travel outside without constantly thinking about, but I haven't worked out. What about my weight? You, when you go to new places, you will be able to try their food without guilt, etc., etc., assuming you have been able to maintain the new body more or less. If you have maintained your new body for the next 10 years, now, by this time, you have changed what I call your baseline. And this is my theory, and I am no psychologist. This is just me observing my life. Your baseline has changed because your body has remained in a certain equilibrium. It has found a new equilibrium, different from the one that it had when you were overweight. Your baseline has now become this new body that you have if you maintain it for 10 years, right? Now you will find that you will be able to go through major life events like have a surgery. Like I recently had a surgery. I was unable to move for 2 weeks. You could get pregnant. You could go for a wedding for three weeks or a month. You could go for a trip. You could be in situations where you would have to temporarily give up on your workout or your strict diet routine, and you will still be able to more or less maintain your weight. In fact, at that point, changing your body weight, becoming overweight again, is almost going to feel tougher than just remaining in that new weight, because you have shifted, you have moved the baseline of your physical body. And likewise, I believe our mental bodies and our emotional bodies and our nervous system all also have a certain baseline, like an equilibrium point, and all our life we have been around that point. So it's the easiest for us to be around that point unless we intentionally decide to make major life changes and to shift that equilibrium. Um, I said your mind also has an equilibrium point. There's a certain level of activity and intensity of activity that it's used to. Your nervous system also has an equilibrium point. It has a baseline. It is calibrated to a certain frequency. There's a certain amount of calm or a certain amount of chaos that you are normally used to. And you have been in that state for a really long time. And you find as you go through life that you subconsciously, you seek things that align with how you are calibrated. For instance, I grew up with a lot of difficulty, and there was a lot of grief, and I, as a child, couldn't process that grief. I didn't have the vocabulary for my grief. I didn't know the meaning of it. I didn't know the usefulness of it. For example, when you go to the gym and you work out, you are suffering in some way, but you know it's for a purpose. But the grief that I was living in, it felt so purposeless. That is a very big burden to carry when your grief is so immense and you can't see the purpose of it. So I lived with that grief silently for years, and at some point, because my grief had no other outlet, I had no other way of processing it. I remember I started listening to really sad music. Now, this I'm talking about, I was in my early teenage years. I had already started listening to really, really sad music, and you will not believe me, like up until 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my friends who used to happen to like plug in my earphone and like check the kind of music I listening to, they used to say, "You listen to such gloomy music. It's not even like sad, it's just there was an air of doom in the kind of music I used to listen to." And it never registered to me that I was doing something out of the ordinary. But now, the way I am, I would almost never listen to sad music unless there is a very specific purpose, like it's a part of the story. I want to enjoy a story while walking on the street or while running. I will never listen to sad music. But at that point, I used to listen to a lot of sad music. I used to read a lot of sad literature, a lot of literature about depression, not even depression in the sense of like studying depression, like feeling it, soaking in it, dwelling in it. Why did I do that? I didn't know any better. I wanted my grief to count in some way. I didn't know where to let go of it. And that was my way of processing it. That was my way of making it count. Similarly, a lot of people who grow up around a certain level of chaos, abuse, they unintentionally have their nervous system calibrated to a certain frequency, and it's almost immaterial what you think here. I'll tell you, when I left my hometown, I was so clear in my head. I was like, I have seen this behavior. I know what toxic behavior is. I know what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I have it all figured out now. I'm going to have beautiful relationships in my life. I had it all figured out here, yes. But my nervous system was calibrated to a certain state of being. And I used to wake up, and while getting ready, I used to listen to sad music. Can you believe it? I would never do it now. But that was the way I had conditioned myself to be. I did that for a really long time, and it's not just always a personal choice. Sometimes we also see there's very famous cases of mothers, or in some cases fathers. It doesn't have to be mother, but mothers are typically the primary caregivers. They are in pain and they are in grief, and adults will switch out of your grief really fast because they don't want to sit in your grief with you. And a lot of the times, men will switch out of your grief or pain really fast, even if it's your partner. Not everybody does that, obviously. So, a lot of these women, when they are in grief and they have nobody to share that grief with, they very young, inappropriately young children become the people who now have the responsibility of sharing that grief with the parent. We see this a lot in Indian households, like parents will come from nowhere and they will come to a young child and they'll start talking about their own death. And I'm believing the purpose is like they are feeling some way and they want the child to kind of share that feeling. But it's basically like, be a witness to my pain, which I understand, but a child is not the right witness to your pain. So, these ways you learn, you pick up grief, you pick up sorrow, and sometimes when it's overwhelming, you don't know what to do with it, you slowly start calibrating your nervous system to that kind of grief, that kind of sorrow. And a lot of people who grow up in chaos, even though they technically in their heads know what chaos is and what dysfunction is, and therefore they think that they know what function is, they end up repeating that cycle again and again of either abuse or neglect or going after people who are unavailable emotionally, not just in romantic relationships, also in friendships. You keep unconsciously bringing that pain into your life, not because there's something wrong with you, but because now here's the difference: a person who's not calibrated to this, right? That person will instinctively, without even thinking, want to distance themselves from something that is making them uncomfortable. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so great, because sometimes good people also make us uncomfortable. People who have different views, people who are on the spectrum, people who have some disability can make you uncomfortable, and that leads to isolation. But on the good side, people whose nervous systems are not calibrated to chaos and they know how to look after themselves, they are not going to give parts of themselves to everyone. And they are going to instinctively pick up on somebody's like frequency, and if that frequency is not something that they want around them, they will move away. Even if that is a relationship, even if that's a friendship, that's not what you want in your life. A person whose nervous system is calibrated to chaos does not do that. You stay. Not only do you stay, a lot of the times you try to overgive. You try to override your intuition. And I believe that kids are really good at prioritizing their needs, but it's beaten out of them. We have this culture where we valorize self sacrifice, we valorize suffering, we love women suffering. We love it on screen, we love it in stories. We love a suffering woman. We are almost are in love with the idea of a woman being in pain. On top of your own nervous system being completely shaken up, you are also getting this message from society that you can actually find beauty in pain. So you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And let me tell you, this energy of grief and self pity is very attractive, it's very enticing to predators. If I was a predator, I would choose somebody who's in that energy versus somebody who's going to shoo me away the moment I make them uncomfortable. So you fall into, because your baseline is that, even though mentally you know what the right thing is and what the wrong thing is, you can't override your baseline. It's like saying, I know mentally how to play tennis, you do this and you do this, but you don't know. You have to actively go and play, and you are going to suck at it initially, and it's going to require a lot of effort, and you have to keep doing it until it becomes second nature. And I think calibration of your nervous system is also like that. You have to really dedicate perhaps a couple, I had to be like that for like more than a couple of months. For like 6 months I was extremely mindful of my thinking. I just decided that I'm not going to think negatively about myself or my life. If I have to choose between grief and anger, I'm going to choose anger, because anger is empowering, grief is helplessness. I completely stopped listening to sad music. I would listen to like melodies, like music that I like, but I would not. I just, the moment I started like talking to myself in a completely different way, mindfully, sad music kind of started turning me off. So I then remembered what a lot of my friends probably felt when they listened to my playlist. And I was like, what kind of bullshit is this? Why would I put myself through that? And I started looking at life in the way of incremental progress, which is that every single day I wake up and I do something. Every single good thought that I think about myself, every single time that I tell myself that I don't deserve to be sad, I'm a good person, I am breaking that cycle that I've been carrying for years. And it's these small incremental steps that are going to change the way I look at life. So, to answer the question, why do you seem to keep attracting a certain equation? You have unconsciously, mostly, we may have calibrated our nervous system to a certain frequency, and therefore when that kind of a person enters your life, you are not immediately turned off by it. Normally bad people come in everybody's life, but your job is to get turned off by bad people so that you don't let them stay. um, that is my theory, that you have to recalibrate your nervous system, your emotional body, and eventually you just stop entertaining bullshit. You, the kind of shit that I've put up with 5 years ago, sometimes I think about it and I cringe so hard. I almost have an out of body experience cringing. And this is true for a lot of people who have been able to take themselves out of this wall of this self pity and grief. It's a completely different energy. I used to be very much that person who used to be like, I did so much for you, why won't you invite me? Like, if a friend group doesn't seem to want to include me. And I look at back at that and I cringe, because I feel like, if you don't want to hang out with me, why would I want you to invite me? Why would I want to be in your life if you don't want me around? If you don't want me to be in your life? So it's work, but it's going to be fruitful work. And also, putting yourself in that frequency of sorrow also was work. It was just work that you don't remember. So, just the way that had become your second nature, this can also become your second nature. That is my theory. Let me know what you think about it. Thank you.